Good day and welcome, Matthew here again, Manufacturers event. We're at Alsace. Alsace? Alsace. Alsace. We're at this track, which I'm not sure what to make of it. In the Group 4 Manufacturers Cup. I already said Manufacturers, didn't I? Never mind. So we started at 11th. I put in a heck of a qualifying lap, I have to say, if I do say so myself. And when I did, I think I sat second provisionally. I was like, what am I doing in second? And then all the fast guys put in their times and I fell back to 11th. And then on my final flying lap, I think I went wide of this corner and I messed it up. I messed it up a bit, I misjudged it. And so I ended up 11th, as you see. Even if I had completed it, maybe a 10th or so, and I might have jumped a position or two, maybe. It was such tough racing. This track does not suit this car at all. So really tough. I knew I was in for a long one. Although the race itself was more based, it had such high fuel consumption, or not high, but reasonably high. So you had to do fuel saving, and the Ferrari, the Group 4 Ferrari, it's not the best, but it's also not the worst. It doesn't really get affected so much by the fuel saving side of things. So I knew some cars were going to be worse off that started ahead of me, and I was looking forward to this. From 11th, I felt I could probably hit 5th or not 5th, 7th, around that. I looked at the cars ahead. I knew some were going to suffer with fuel, and some were going to suffer with tyre wear. Maybe the front engine, front wheel drive cars were going to slowly come back to me late race. So I was holding out hope. I just had to hold on to my position and keep in touch with the guys ahead. Huzo in the Subaru, he was one driver. I was like, I have the pace over him. I might be able to get him early. And then if I hang on to the Aston, the McLaren ahead will fall back. So we'll see how we go. So Holland started behind me. He's not really saving fuel at this stage, so he's heading on by. Or I wasn't too sure. He didn't seem to be that much faster at this stage, but he was definitely faster down the straight, so I'd assumed he wasn't saving as much fuel as me, or as much fuel as required, but he was making progress up the ranks. So I let him go. I figured he could cause some chaos or get into a brawl or two, and maybe I could take advantage of the pieces. I wasn't sure if he was going to pit anyway, or if any of the other drivers were going to pit. I was hoping, but I wasn't sure. So I let him go, and I was just going to hold on to the back of him. So that was the game plan, really. Starting 11th, I felt I had okay race pace, so I felt I could move up the field, and the goal would be around 7th place. So as you see, quite quickly, as I kind of predicted, Holland gets past Huzo. He had more straight line speed. The Subaru's not known for its straight line speed. They went through that left-hander side by side that compromised Huzo and allowed me to get through. So I took advantage of that position. I was actually almost afraid he was going to go around the outside of me through that bank corner. But I put my foot down. I had the apex, had a better line, and just got ahead. So I didn't think he was really going to threaten me. I knew he was there. I wouldn't really drop him. But he doesn't have the straight line speed to catch and dive me on under braking. So I wasn't too worried, but I just had to keep my eye on him. And so now my next target was the Aston Martin. I wasn't too worried about Holland because of the speed he was going. I was really just going to try to concentrate on catching up to Flying Dumbo and the Aston and taking his place. So we jump ahead to lap 5. Now you see Keaton, who I've been told used to be Bo 231, 123, whatever his name was, is falling back in the McLaren. The McLaren's very fuel hungry, so it doesn't do well in these types of races. He's slowly falling back and making a bit of a group up here with Holland and Dumbo. I've spent the last 4 or 5 laps trying to chase him down, and I'm in this position. Keaton runs wide, Dumbo runs a little bit wide, and now they go side by side through this corner, which is really tough to take the outside line, so Holland doesn't quite get there. They have a tap. I have to get off the power, Huzo behind you, just see my rear view, goes up to the left hand side of me. I'm now watching Huzo. I'm concerned about my battle with him and not losing a place. He opens the door just here, so I kind of put my car in there and I misjudged how much they were going to slow up. I totally misjudged it. I was looking at Huzo, so I tapped Dumbo as you saw. That pushed Holland wide. Holland is now to the left of me, and now we're chasing down Huzo. I've actually got a good run and Holland's just behind me at this stage. So now I'm looking for a way past Huzo, maybe if he makes a mistake, but Holland dives down the outside. I see that coming. I try to dive into the apex here. Holland attacks me back into that corner, which he was at quite a compromised position, and it gave me a 5-second penalty, which I was rather annoyed about. I thought it was all fair and fun and games, pretty tight, and I knew it was going to, you know, that last corner is a real pinch point. There's only one lane through there. You can't really go side by side. That's me taking the penalty, by the way. So you can't really go side by side through that last corner. It's one or the other. And Holland had done the move that I had done another driver in the previous race. This is race 2 of the night. So I knew the counter tactic would to be either prevent them from going around the outside, really diving harder than they did, or getting to the last apex first. And that's what my plan was. I had a better line because I was further over to the right, so I could attack that last apex a lot faster than he could, because his car was pushed up against the left hand side of the wall. So I knew he'd have to brake a lot earlier to, you know, slow down and get around that apex. So I attacked that last apex as fast as I could, and at that time I thought I was clear of him. But we'll go back and have a look from his perspective. So this is just after the small incident at that previous corner. This is on board with Holland. I get a good run around the outside of him up that left-hander. So I'm now ahead of Holland going into here. He does brake later and deeper, just going around the outside. This is all fine. And then he goes and dives me and clips the wall on the way through because he hit me. So looking from his perspective, I was clearly ahead of him. That gap was always going to close. He should not have been doing that. Not at all. I know Holland's an aggressive driver. I kind of expected it. At the time, I thought maybe it was a bit more marginal. But looking back and looking through this replay, it was quite a dive. I was clearly ahead. I was taking the curb, and he just dived me on the inside. He was, I think, still accelerating at the point where you probably should be braking. So he was definitely not trying to make the corner. He was going to use my car to get around the corner. So I know Holland's an aggressive driver, but sometimes you just got to make a better judgment call and pull back a bit. So from that penalty, that was basically my race over. But I thought I'd just show you this last lap shenanigans from Holland once again. Funny how he gets in a lot of these fights. But anyway, so Keaton goes wide at this corner. Holland gets a good run on him. Beastspec Bob has an even better run on Holland. Pulls over to the left. Gets boxed in. He kind of tries to, I guess, push Holland out of the way to make some room. That gifts Holland a penalty because B-Spec runs up against the barrier. And I guess at this point, this annoys Holland immensely. Holland runs out of fuel here, but he decides to block him, block Dino's, and block B-Spec Bob again as he crossed the line. Just nuts. So once again, from the same perspective, this time behind the car so you can see it a bit better, B-Spec takes a wider line into this corner, gives him a better run than Holland, especially when Keaton runs wide. Holland goes over to the right. B-Spec already had the run, so he had nowhere to go, had to go left. I guess he tries to force Holland out of the way. I'm not sure what he was trying to do then, but the slide up against the barrier gives Holland a penalty, as you see. And I can only imagine that annoys him. I can only imagine that's why he behaves like this. So he runs out of fuel and then decides to take out the drivers that were going to go past him, which he'd already lost because with the penalty he was going to lose the time anyway. So that was it. It was some quite rough racing in amongst all of this. in particular with Holland, but there were a few other instances. What? There are a few other incidents within this race. And I guess the nature of this track, your passing opportunities, the few corners that are pretty good, all narrow down into one lane run. So you kind of, an overtake is more about both drivers in these cases, where the overtaker has to get the run and place their car properly, and the one being overtaken has to see that coming, or has to see that and allow for it to happen at the same time, because it's very easy to not allow it, and you run into crashes and bumps and bangs, as you've seen. I don't agree with what Holland's done. His lunge on me was overly optimistic. It's kind of to be expected with him, so it's entirely his fault, and his fault why I got the penalty. And looking at the final race results, I may have, Flying Dragon, I think, ends up 6th. That it could have been. I was battling with him at the time of the incident. Huzo ends up 6th or something. Huzo and Flying Dragon end up 6th and 7th. I was battling with him at the time of the incident. That we'd had an epic race for 5 laps. It was tight like this, and to end it like that, it's such a shame, especially for this car at this track. I was not expecting anything. The car doesn't suit the track. It's just the nature of this track. And it would have been such an awesome race to finish, 6th or 7th or thereabouts after that battle. So it was a shame that to have it end that way. Really, really frustrating looking back at it. And such a silly move, which was never really on for Holland. And then at the end, I don't know what B-Spec was doing. B-Spec had been taken out, completely out of the blue, on the same lap that I was, actually. So it was a real shame for him, because he's been driving that Honda really well. He's really doing a good job in the Honda this season. I've been pretty impressed by him. And he was sitting in 3rd at the time, and he unfortunately got caught up in an incident between Conzio and Dino's. And so he was fighting his way back with Holland, and I don't know what he was trying to do, trying to make the room to get around the McLaren. I guess that's the only assumption I can make. I haven't talked to him, but that's the only assumption I can make. And then for Holland to get a penalty and then take it out at the end like that, I kind of look back at it and laugh, but it's just not how you should behave. I'm not trying to be somebody's dad and say, don't behave like this, it's bad. But it's, it's all fun and games. We're all here to race and have a good time, and you just want to race each other respectfully, and it's a lot better, and it's a lot better when it happens like that, Close racing is better when it's clean, not when you're knocking each other off the track. And a finished race like that, I debated whether I should show it, because it's a bit embarrassing I find it's a bit embarrassing for the region, that's the sort of things that go on. It doesn't often. How often do you see me do it? Actually, probably every week. I like to find the drama, But yeah, it's just not a good look, and I'm a little embarrassed, and just shouldn't behave that way on the track. Even if a race doesn't go your way, suck it up, finish the race, and come back to it next time, and try to approach things differently. It's like in qualifying. I got held up by a guy in qualifying, I think in the first race. I was on a flying lap, he was on an out lap, because I was out of sync with all the other drivers. It happens sometimes. I made a mistake early on. Actually, it was Huzo. So I'll start again. Try to tell a story in order. Right. So I got caught up behind Huzo on my first flying lap of this qualifying session, which is fine. I did not make the gap. I'd assumed the gap was going to be there. Huzo slowed up a bit, and so that gap disappeared. So then I was in Huzo's draft, right? That's not a good place to be, especially with the draft changes. So I tried to make the most of it. I failed. I pulled into the pits. So now I was out of sync with everybody else. So come my next flying lap, I'm on a flying lap, everybody else on the out lap. One of the drivers does not see me coming, not paying attention, whatever, and blocks me into an important corner when I was on actually quite a decent lap. So that cost me a good starting position. I think I started the race 16th that time, which was the first race of the night. You know, I could go and, you know, yell to the cows come home, you know, what are you doing? Why are you there? You should pay more attention. And I'm sure he did apologise. And I didn't yell at him, but he just apologised anyway. And I'm sure he'll probably pay more attention from now on. It's a lesson he'll learn. And the lesson I learned was that I should have made my gap better in my first flying lap, so then I'm not out of sync with everybody. You know, I could get grumpy and take it out on everybody else and prevent their qualifying laps, but that's not the way you behave. I'm going to go back and make sure I make better gaps next time for my own flying lap, so I don't get out of sync, so I'm not coming up against outlap traffic and making a meal of my qualifying session and starting 16th. It's just not how you go about things, you know. So learn from your mistakes, take errors and take penalties like this. Like, I'm certainly going to learn from my incident with Holland. You know, I could have let him have the position. Turns out he ran out of fuel on the last lap. He was going much slower in the last couple of laps. And I'd actually predicted this in the race. I predicted that he was using more fuel early on, and he was going to run out come the end of it. And if I'd thought about that at the time, rather than thinking I've got to hold this position, I should have thought, long term, he's going to run out of fuel. He's not really the threat. Let him have the position. I wouldn't have had this incident, and I may have finished 6th or 7th. So as much as I can sit there and say Holland was dumb and he shouldn't have done that move, which he shouldn't have, but I can look back and go, well, where can I improve, and how can I take that into future races so this doesn't happen again, so I get a better result for myself. You know, sometimes it's just about thinking about the long game, and often I'm pretty good at it, but in this instance I guess I got caught up with the melee of cars and some close battling, which was a lot of fun, has to be said. Anyway, enough rambling on. Thank you for coming along and watching. If you did like what you see, hit the subscribe button, share this with your friends and family. If you do want to see these races live and hear the live reaction and the disappointment and excitement at the same time often, follow me on Twitch. The link is in the description below. But until then, thank you very much for coming along, and we'll catch you next time.